So last year, the whole conference was about AI. This year, we have a very intensive AI track. Yesterday, we had a very discussion about the gloom and doom of what AI may or may not make of our jobs. And to start the day off on yet another gloomy note, let me introduce Noz Urbina. Over to you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Jack. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for coming. Hello, and welcome to everybody in the virtual track. I'm Noz Urbina. I am a Peruvian Canadian from Spain who works mostly in the USA. But this is not an Urbina consulting presentation. I would love to tell you about all the stuff that we've been doing with major brands to enable omnichannel, artificial intelligence, structured content, because frankly, it's awesome. But, I would love to tell you about the kind of work we've been doing with brands like IKEA, National Geographic, Moderna, Pfizer, and the UK government in the last 18 months alone. But I have 18 minutes. So instead, I'm going to tell you a little story. When I was just a wee little Noz, my mother would let me choose anything that I wanted for dessert. I could choose an apple or a pear. Totally up to me. And that may seem like a nothing little story, but it's important context for everything I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about what I think is going on. And what is going on is we're not okay. We're not okay. Lavicon's great, but we are not okay. I have made this a global talk. If you feel it hits home for you, if you feel it's personal, great, I'm doing my job, but I could have given this talk on any stage anywhere in the world. I chose Lavicon because Jack trusts me. And I trust Lavicon as a place that I can be vulnerable and bring you my new ideas. But please remember, I'm not talking about this or that country, this or that political party or institution or situation. I'm talking about all of us everywhere. And all of us everywhere are being affected by artificial intelligence. So now, I'm watching y'all on LinkedIn. And I got to say, especially in the content community, when it comes to artificial intelligence, I'm getting a lot of artificial intelligence? Piffle! Are you telling me I, as an artisan of the word, could be replaced by mere machine? They lack empathy and common sense understanding. They spout errors confidently as fact. They can't create, they just imitate and regurgitate. And they could never reason. Let's talk about this. This is my sister Joanna. She has moderate to severe autism. Autism as a condition, by definition, makes empathy and common sense difficult, because the autistic mind has difficulty imagining what might be in the mind of another, which is why you have the classic symptom of difficulties picking up on commonly understood social cues. Does my sister not qualify as intelligent? Have you ever been to a bar? But seriously, who among us does a perfect first draft? Who among us doesn't make mistakes? Who doesn't need practice or training to learn things? I am seeing people put 2 sentences into a machine and expect the white paper to come out. That is not reasonable. And speaking of reason, this is my favorite. In the earliest 20th century, psychologist Alexander Lurie was working with non-literate Uzbek herdsmen. And he found that they struggled with abstract logical problems. Problems like, in the far north, where there's always snow, the bears are white. Siberia is in the far north. What color are the bears there? The herdsman would fall back on personal experience and say things like, I've only seen black bears, so I cannot say. This study, among many others, shows, well, many others who I would love to show you, shows how literacy reshapes how we think. Logic, formal logic, philosophy, all arrived in the world after writing. And as writing moved around the world, philosophy would pop up shortly after. So are these people not intelligent? When they were pressed, the interviewers would say, well, what do my words imply? And they would say, I cannot know based on merely words. And I think it's kind of wonderful. You know, the humility, being able to be humble and say, listen, I don't know. I do not know. Because we all live in pre-AI literate societies. This is Eric Schmidt, ex-CEO of Google, who is summing up and validating a lot of my main concerns.
And I learned running YouTube for a decade that images drive people insane. So the way to say it is that when the image generation is indistinguishable from true images, democracy could die.
When image generation becomes indistinguishable from true images, democracy could die. But when is now? These videos were generated this month, so we're past 6 fingers, robotic poses, distorted faces, obvious hallucinations and errors. We're now talking about images that connect with our humanity and reflect it and even affect our feelings. And it's not just video. So this is an example from, I think, nearly 2 years ago, showing that modern engines only need 3 seconds of human voice input to be able to match a voice. Everything to the left of the gray line is a human voice. She's a voice actor, so her delivery is a little bit robotic, but she is a human being. And everything to the right of the line is what the computer thought the rest of the sentence should be. See if you can hear the difference.
Of people are, in 9 cases out of 10, mere spectacle reflections of the actuality of things.
Let's try it again.
Of people are, in 9 cases out of 10, mere spectacle reflections of the actuality of things.
I'm pretty deep in this AI stuff, and so not a lot of clips will ever get me, but this made me call my mother, and we now have a code word so she knows it's me calling. And I recommend you do the same. And yes, of course, millions have already been lost around the world to voice and even video call scams like this. Edward O. Wilson is frequently quoted in AI circles, and he says, we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. It is terrifically dangerous. It is now approaching a point of crisis overall. And I'm calling that crisis truth collapse. The AI metacrisis that will make or break the world. The reason I say that is because if we cannot have a discussion, because we cannot come together on basic truths, then all other discussions are moot. They become irrelevant. We can't tackle complex, collaborative, even international challenges if we cannot touch truth. But I want to be clear that the AI crisis is not something from the recent past or the near future. It's something that's been happening for years. And that requires me to talk a little bit about what an AI actually is. So what I mean by AI, I'm out of the closet on this, amongst other things. I have been talking about AI for over a decade, but we couldn't call it AI back then. I actually took the term AI off of slides back then. This is from IBM from 2010, and they were using terms like predictive analytics, where the police systems would use past crime data to tell police stations where to position officers in advance. And they lowered crime in Memphis by 30%. Some of you may already be thinking that sounds like a search engine for people whose skin is like mine or browner. And I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm not saying it was a good system. I'm saying it was with us all along. Side note, a lot of people who have known me and known me for years think I'm white. I don't know if it's because of the way I talk or what, but they don't think of me as the child of Latino immigrants. but that's exactly what I am. And I mentioned in the opening, I am Peruvian. But for me, it talks to how we frame information and how we allocate information based on our assumptions. And it's extremely hard to keep track of all the hundreds of little data points that are coming at you in a day. An AI is a technology that can learn. Yes, Google's search engine was always driven by algorithms that automatically generate a response to each query, but these algorithms amounted to a definite set of rules. Google engineers could readily change and refine these rules, and unlike neural nets, these algorithms did not learn on their own. That was in 2016, when the head of AI became the head of search. Because an AI is not like traditional software. It is not a human creation where humans figure out the problem and explain it to a computer. AI isn't programmed, it is grown. We give it food, which we call data. We give it goals. And if it doesn't achieve its goals, it dies, like natural selection. It works like an organism. Like an organism, we don't fully understand it, and like an organism, from great simplicity can come great complexity. I love these guys. These are termites from Africa, and they make these huge, complex, massive structures. And this is how they do it. The termites begin with a surprisingly simple rule. When they encounter a piece of dirt on an incline, they drop their own load of dirt on top of it. The building process does not require any centralized coordination, but emerges from repeated local interactions between the termites and their environment. The method creates a feedback loop. As dirt accumulates in one area, it encourages more termites to deposit their loads there, leading to the formation of these towering mounds. I can think of no better metaphor for how an algorithm works. We start with the flat, equal playing field of our content, our posts, our words, our videos. And then the feedback loop begins. Someone hovers, views, shares, likes, and the algorithm begins to elevate certain content. And of course, it's never the thoughtful, middle-of-the-road, nuanced stuff that gets elevated. What gets elevated is that which touches our Paleolithic emotions: joy, anger, fear, arousal, disgust, and most powerful of all, moral outrage. The US Congress heard in a hearing that Twitter calculated that for every word of moral outrage added to a tweet, retweets increased by 17%. So a recommendation engine, simply by elevating what is most engaging, is actually an extremism machine, raising the spikier bits of content above the rest. But we don't get to see the process. We are only fed the results. We are fed on our feeds a normalized, reflattened view of the extreme. Search further filters and highlights the most extreme because who looks past the first few results? This is Professor Stuart Russell from UC Berkeley Research talking, for me, giving the best summary of how these things actually work.
If you think about the way the algorithms work, right, they want you to click on things, engage with content, or spend time on the platform. And you might say, well, okay, the only way to get people to click on things is to send them things they're interested in. So what's wrong with that? But that's not the answer. That's not the way you maximize click-through. The way you maximize click-through is actually to send people a chain of content that turns them into somebody else who is more susceptible to clicking on whatever content you're going to be able to send them in future. So the algorithms have, at least according to the mathematical models that we've built, the algorithms have learned to manipulate people, to change them, so that in future, they're more susceptible and they can be monetized at a higher rate.
Who here does not trust these things? Who here does not delegate hundreds or thousands of decisions to these things all the time? Who hasn't used them to find a song, a dinner, a car, a job, an employee, a partner? Why not an idea or a belief? No one can think about the hundreds of nudges we're getting every day, year after year after year after year. Later in that clip, Professor Russell says that platforms don't care what your beliefs are, they just care that you're susceptible. And these networks of feeds become whole parallel realities. How many times have we had this conversation? How can they not see this? What world are they living in? We are literally being segmented, to use the marketing term, from each other, and I would say from ourselves. And an AI feedback loop of our data and our content could create hyper-engaging content. 10 years ago, Facebook proved that with a few dozen likes, they could predict your answers on a personality survey better than your colleagues. With a few hundred likes, they could predict your personality better than your partner. That was a decade ago. We're talking about machines thousands of times more powerful with thousands of more data points about you. This is, of course, paradise for actual liars, because anytime you get caught, you can just say, it wasn't me, the AI did it. This is fraud. This could become a feedback loop where the AIs create perfect content, perfectly delightful, perfectly engaging, perfectly disgusting, perfectly addictive. And it is there we find truth collapse. So we're not talking about a human making decisions for us who cares about us. We're talking about a thing that is incapable of caring for us. So it may seem hard to believe, hard to accept, that we could invent a machine that could so hijack our desires and override our reason. But we have invented such a machine. And in fact, we invented it 100 years ago. Platforms feed us engaging content. Engaging content trends towards the extremes. Algorithms gradually, subtly change users, and especially creators, who they reward and actually even pay for engagement. Ergo, platforms reward and even pay people for becoming extreme. But I'm not having a go at the platforms because we all want engaging content. And the whole thing can happen without anyone even needing to know what is going on. The bias is automatic in the system without censorship or bad actors. There was no bad actor working at Facebook who wanted to make young girls bulimic. And do any of us really want it to stop? Would you give up your Spotify, your Netflix, your YouTube, this delightful feed of content that comes at you every day? This is the result of the way that the mechanisms work and what we have all collectively asked them to do. This is not the platform's fault. This is society's fault. And then there's this. We were not made to handle this. But I do want it to stop because we're not OK. Of course, this image was generated by AI. But did this generated bundle of pixels not create a feeling in you? We have Paleolithic emotions. So the very observant of you will notice that I skipped the creativity box earlier because I wanted to wait for here to say, isn't creating an emotion one of the ultimate acts of creativity? So what the hell do we do? Keep talking. I've launched a whole freaking website about this. Please reach out. Get these links. Some of these links are on the site. Watch them. Tell me who to talk to next. Send me your ideas. But I am not saying that I am going to get us out of this. Discussion and debate is the only way forward, but we must all assume our responsibility to become AI literate and teach others. We are artisans of the word. We cannot sleep on this. We have to think hard about potential abuses. There's a whole taxonomy of generative AI misuse. Check it out. Learn it. I didn't know all the ways that people would think of to abuse these things. We have to learn to say no to our boss, to a client who has a whizzy AI idea that may be able to be abused or be dangerous. And we have to even say no to ourselves. We have to reconnect with and repair the institutions we created to safeguard civilization. As much as it may disgust you to your core, government is the only mechanism we have in society to limit a social downward spiral. This is how we stopped or limited smoking, leaded gas, slavery. We changed the laws to change society. And we have to repair our empathy and sympathy for everyone everywhere. I said I live in Europe. There's pictures from Amsterdam in the Reformation when brother was stabbing brother in the streets. Europe was at war with itself for thousands of years. And the only reason it stopped, the only reason there is peace in Europe today is because they all said, this has got to stop. This has got to stop. We are not okay. We are all in this together, all of us. This is not about nations or cultures or races. This is everyone. But we will figure it out. And my last call to action, be humble as a herdsman.